On this Saturday night, special delivery. The first shipment of aid arrives by sea to Gaza as the number of children facing starvation soars.
It's a war on women and children.
With another round of ceasefire talks set to resume. Battling breast cancer.
This is critically important we address this issue now.
A Hollywood celebrity's story raising questions about screening in Canada. Plus, weird wildlife. How Nova Scotia is helping this feisty but furless raccoon.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The largest humanitarian organization in Gaza says the situation unfolding in the Strip is deteriorating by the minute, and new numbers from the UN show children are the hardest hit. In northern Gaza, at least 31% of infants under the age of 2 suffered from acute malnutrition in February. That's twice as many as the previous month. Evidence the UN says that hunger is spreading fast and reaching devastating and unprecedented levels. Some relief arrived overnight, the first shipment of aid to reach Gaza by sea in almost 2 decades. There's also a glimmer of hope for a pause in fighting, with news today that talks between Israel and Hamas will resume as early as tomorrow. Mackenzie Gray has our top story tonight.
The first ship's worth of food aid have arrived in Gaza 150 days after the war started, sent by Spanish and American NGOs, with more shipments to come soon.
We are right now at night working non-stop to get more aid to Gaza.
200 tons of food made its way into Gaza in the first shipment, but that will only help a small number of people who are going hungry. The UN reporting a quarter of Gaza's entire population is at risk of famine, leading to desperate scenes like this. Children sent to go fishing in a bid to find any food.
This is a war on civilians. It's a war on women and children. It's a war on human rights.
The Germans and French join the growing number of military airdrops of aid into Gaza.
Schönen Dank.
As the German chancellor is headed to Israel to tell President Benjamin Netanyahu to allow for more aid into Gaza and to join the growing number of Western countries pushing him to not launch a large-scale invasion of Rafah.
We can't support a major offensive in Rafah that doesn't also include a credible, achievable, executable plan to take care for the safety and security of the more than 1 million Gazans that are seeking refuge in Rafah.
Despite Western pressure, Netanyahu and his cabinet approved plans for both an offensive into Rafah and an evacuation of civilians. But continued peace talks mean those plans might not need to be used. The New York Times reporting Hamas is no longer demanding Israel agree to a permanent ceasefire for hostages and prisoner exchanges to resume. Instead, Israeli troops would have a phased pullback from parts of Gaza as hostages are released. Proposals that will continue to be discussed at peace talks in Doha, Qatar, with a new team of Israeli negotiators that were sent on Friday. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
Residents in Haiti are bracing for another tense night with surging violence and a ballooning humanitarian crisis. Attacks continued in Haiti's capital in the aftermath of the resignation of the country's prime minister this week. A transitional government could be appointed by the end of the weekend as aid groups warn of growing hunger and severe malnutrition as the violence makes it harder for people to safely find food. Growing numbers are now traveling to neighboring Dominican Republic to bring food and other supplies back home across the border. And Mercedes Stephenson has more on the Canadian response to that crisis. Mercedes.
Jeff, as the world watches the situation in Haiti deteriorate, some countries, including Canada, have evacuated their non-essential diplomatic staff from the country due to the rising risk of gang violence. On this week's The West Block, Canada's ambassador to Haiti told me the last thing that he wants to do is to have to pull all diplomatic staff out of the embassy. But security concerns are indeed top of mind.
I won't disclose my location, but I can assure you that I'm well equipped. I have water, food, and good security. So I'm not worried for my own personal safety. I mean, we have to be careful.
Back Back when U.S. President Joe Biden had visited Canada, he had hoped this country would lead a multinational force in Haiti, but the Canadian government did not step in, concerned about military resources and the potential deaths of Canadian soldiers and police. I asked the ambassador about Canada's hesitancy to get involved in Haiti on the ground.
I think we have to be realistic about our own capacity, and what we are doing is really playing on our strength, providing something that is definitely needed, training in a third country.
We also spoke to Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Ray. He raised concerns about illegal U.S. weapons that are flowing towards Haiti and those guns which are ending up in the hands of gangs who have seized control of the country.
We need greater effort from the Americans on the export of arms from their country to Haiti. We have to understand that the largest source of guns in Haiti, and frankly in the Caribbean, is the United States of America. And we've talked to the Americans about this.
Ray says a made-in-Haiti solution is required, but with international support. Ambassador Ray also says Haiti's collapse would have, quote, a devastating impact on North America. Jeff?
Mercedes Stephenson in Ottawa. Thanks, Mercedes. And you can watch the full interviews tomorrow morning on the West Block, right here on Global. Well, another day, another incident involving a Boeing passenger plane. U.S. authorities are now investigating how a United Airlines 737 lost an external panel. The flight landed safely in Oregon, carrying 139 passengers. No one noticed the panel was missing until after the 25-year-old plane had arrived. A local newspaper posted what appears to be a photo of the plane's underbelly. It will remain grounded until United completes an investigation. In Calgary, a man is dead following an armed standoff with police that lasted for more than 30 hours. It began on Thursday when officers tried to execute a search warrant at a home in the city's northeast. They say a man began shooting at police, firing more than 100 rounds. Police say the situation escalated Friday evening and the suspect was ultimately shot and killed. No one else was hurt. A child welfare agency in Manitoba has begun removing 20 high-risk, high-needs teenagers from 13 privately owned group homes. It comes on the heels of the province severing ties with the operator, Spirt Rising House, after cannabis was given to teens in one of those homes as a harm reduction measure. But staff tell Global News that, quote, knee-jerk reactions have had a devastating toll. Melissa Ridgen has this Global News exclusive.
I just worry with just the behavioral changes we've seen.
These are caregivers of some of the most vulnerable high-needs kids in Manitoba.
There's a lot of fear in these kids, I suppose.
Fear over what comes next as they're being uprooted following a spat between Spirit Rising Group Homes and the Manitoba government, prompting the teens' legal guardian, Southeast Child and Family Services, to order their removal.
We were told anytime before the 27th that they could be removed, so it could be today, it could be the 27th.
All in response to staff at one of Spirit Rising's 13 group homes giving teens marijuana to keep them from drug seeking on the streets.
They can hand out clean needles on the streets and hand out Narcan, but it's not okay to give a kid pot, which I know that doesn't do any damage to anybody. It's saving my daughter's life.
Voices like that and the kids themselves ignored, say these caregivers.
Suicide attempts, AWOLs, drug use, destabilization all around of the unknown. It's very heartbreaking to see.
The challenge now, keeping the rest safe.
We're being used until they rip them from the homes that they've had, that they love, with people they love.
We asked Southeast CFS what supports are being offered and if there are enough suitable homes for these high-needs teens in Manitoba's overloaded child welfare system. They didn't respond. Families Minister Nahani Fontaine is traveling out of province, but a statement from her department says the priority right now is finding safe new placements for youth in the care of Spirit Rising House. Caregivers say those words are empty and have this plea.
Come talk to our damn kids.
Exactly. They need to be heard.
Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
Online screening for breast cancer made headlines this week after actress Olivia Munn revealed how a simple risk assessment saved her life. Around 1 in 9 Canadian women are expected to develop breast cancer during their lifetime. Catherine Ward reports on the risk assessment tools for Canadians.
3 days after this Oscars red carpet appearance, actress Olivia Munn posted to Instagram revealing her cancer diagnosis. Munn's experience is driving home the importance of early detection. A genetic test for 90 different cancers found Munn was not a carrier for common cancer genes, but still her doctor calculated her breast cancer risk assessment score. That led to more thorough physical testing and the discovery that Munn actually had luminal B cancer in both breasts. 30 days later, she went in for double mastectomy surgery. Ontario Health's online assessment tool is one of several options that work similarly. Basically, you agree to the terms and conditions, click Start Now, and then you're directed to a questionnaire. Questions focus on common risk factors, including family history, genetics, and lifestyle. Advocates say online tools are a good first step to encourage people to self-screen, but not a replacement.
Use the assessment tool, but don't rely only on that and get those mammograms done. They are still our best first line of defense for breast cancer. And the earlier we catch it, the more curable it is.
Throughout her 40s, Natalie Quadrins pushed for mammograms, despite healthcare providers telling her she was too young for that type of screening. At 46, she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
As we went through some more testing and started some treatments, we realized it was actually terminal. So it was stage 4.
Every year, more than 22,000 women will develop breast cancer and 5,000 will die, according to the Public Health Agency of Canada. Those numbers, coupled with a doctor shortage, are a worrisome combination for Canadian Medical Association President Dr. Kathleen Ross.
More than 6 million Canadians don't have access to a primary care provider. This means that there are chronic diseases, acute illnesses like cancer that will fall through the gaps and present with later diagnoses. This is critically important we address this issue now.
Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
Turning from friend to foe. Coming up, Donald Trump's former vice president takes aim at his old boss. Welcome back. Donald Trump has become his party's presumptive nominee on his quest to return to the White House, but he's now facing criticism over his platform from a former ally who stood next to Trump during his 4 years in the Oval Office. As Reggie Cicchini explains, it's part of a broader shift in the Republican Party.
And we want to have unity, and we're going to have unity.
Donald Trump is the Republican Party's presumptive nominee, but deep beneath the surface lies cracks in that unity.
I cannot, in good conscience, endorse Donald Trump in this campaign.
Mike Pence was vilified for not overturning his old boss's 2020 loss, but the reasons behind his cold shoulder in this election are a set of deep convictions shaping his decision to not back Trump.
Donald Trump is pursuing and articulating an agenda that is at odds with the conservative agenda.
Trump's non-committal stance on abortion and recent 180 on a TikTok divestment jostled the longtime conservative. His non-endorsement now falls in line with previous Republican vice presidents.
There has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump.
There are a number of conservatives for whom the word conservative matters more than, the team jersey they happen to have on at the moment.
Whatever fractures do exist in the foundation are unlikely to make a difference. Primary results show that Trump's supporters shrug off or even embrace his controversies, highlighting how he's erased the GOP's past to rewrite himself as the new establishment.
Trump has really wrapped the base, so to speak, around his finger.
Entrenched as his voters are, Trump's liabilities may become a hurdle in the race towards November.
A not insignificant percentage of Trump voters have said they will not support him if he's criminally convicted.
That could provide wary Republicans with an ability to clear their conscience come Election Day, even if it leaves them with no political home.
They give other Republicans permission to say, you know what, we don't like either of the guys at the top of the ticket. We'll take a pass this time.
Reggie Cicchini, Global News, Washington.
Putin's prolonged rule. Still ahead, we'll speak with a Canadian journalist about the mood in Moscow as Russians head to the polls. Voters in Russia are heading to the polls this weekend in the country's three-day presidential election, which ends tomorrow. The event amounts to little more than democracy theater. Any serious opposition challengers have either been prevented from running, are in prison, or dead, including, of course, Alexei Navalny. As a result, Vladimir Putin is guaranteed to win, extending the Russian leader's decades-long rule.
August 9th, 1999, a fresh new face enters the world stage. Vladimir Putin, son of working-class parents from St. Petersburg and a former intelligence officer, is appointed Russia's acting prime minister. Less than 5 months later, Boris Yeltsin's resignation opens the door for a new Russian president.
I looked the man in the eye. I found him to be very straightforward and trustworthy.
But as the years progress, Putin tightens his grip on power, determined to restore Russia to its former Soviet glory, whatever the cost. In 2008, Putin declares victory after a short war with Georgia, then again 6 years later annexing Crimea, all while amending the Constitution and extending his term limits. Putin has now paved the way to remain in control of the Kremlin until 2036. That would surpass the ruthless reigns of Joseph Stalin, even Catherine the Great.
And joining us now from Moscow is Fred Weir, a Canadian journalist who has lived and worked in Russia for 38 years and is now the Russian correspondent for the Christian Science Monitor. Fred, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. We know the results this weekend are effectively a foregone conclusion, but what are you watching for?
Well, yes, even some Russian official commentators describe it more like a referendum on Vladimir Putin and his policies than any kind of competitive election, because it is far less than elections in the past, which did have some element of competition, some kind of serious opposition that got to use the election as a platform to express their ideas. There's none of that here. So the things that we will look for, I think, are turnout, first of all. And secondly, there could be spoiled ballots. You know, the opposition are urging a boycott, but others say turnout, vote for anybody but Putin, and there are 3 other candidates on the ballot, or write in the name of Alexei Navalny. You'll spoil the ballot, of course, but the spoiled ballot will be counted as a spoiled ballot.
Right, so symbolic protests, and we're also expecting to see a very real protest on Sunday. You know, it's hard for us these days to get a clear read on how ordinary Russians are feeling about their president and the war in Ukraine. How would you describe the mood in Russia these days?
Well, it is hard, even being in the middle of it, to gauge public opinion and what people think. But I think when you say ordinary Russians, I think the majority of them are fine with the way things are. They're not enthusiastic about the war, but my sense is that most Russians think, first of all, it's distant from them because the sanctions don't really bite in everyday life, and the war is far away. And unless you know somebody who's on the front line or something, then it doesn't affect you. But there's a small and a very vocal minority who are sort of pro-West, liberal-minded people who have not accepted the regime that Putin has built.
Journalism is risky business these days in Russia, of course. To my knowledge, I think, Fred, you're the last Canadian journalist left in Russia. We've seen other journalists arrested, kicked out of the country for coverage critical of the Kremlin, even just for calling Russia's invasion of Ukraine a war. How are you feeling? How are you doing these days as a Canadian journalist operating, working in Russia?
A lot of people don't talk to foreign journalists anymore, people who used to. That is a problem. It's getting to be more like Soviet times were in that respect. And at the beginning of the war, I was careful. You know, I had to put special military operation in quotation marks instead of saying war. and so on. But I stopped doing that. I write more or less freely, and I don't seem to get any repercussions from it. It's Russian journalists who are in the straitjacket now. If you're a Russian journalist today, it's you're gonna have to mind your P's and Q's very carefully, because trouble can come for you. I don't think the Russians care much about us, but about Russian journalists, yes, they do.
Well, we certainly care about you and really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here today, Fred. Fred Weir, who is a Canadian and the Russian correspondent for the Christian Science Monitor based in Moscow. Thanks so much again.
Thank you.
Up next, the strange story behind this furless friend raising eyebrows in Nova Scotia. Cities across Canada and the U.S. are going green, getting ready to celebrate St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. The Chicago River received a dye job today, a tradition that has carried on for 7 decades. Well, Tampa, Florida also got into the spirit for its River-O Green Festival. Both cities say the green coloring is safe for the environment. Well, the unique appearance of an animal in Nova Scotia is attracting attention. This is Rufus, and believe it or not, she is a raccoon. It's hard to tell without that trademark mask and bushy ringed tail, but a wildlife rehabilitation center has taken her in and says she has alopecia.
We do see it in squirrels and other species. Even humans have it. So it is out there. It's in, it's genetic. So we do need to see whether we can help this raccoon.
Staff at the center say they're amazed that Rufus made it through the winter without fur, and they attribute it to her feisty nature. They're hoping her hair will grow back with some rehabilitation. Get well soon, Rufus. That is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is the Bay of Islands in Newfoundland and Labrador. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back here again tomorrow. Have a great night.